Welcome to Faith in Recovery with Banyan Treatment Centers and your host, Anthony Acampora.
Hi, I'm Anthony Acampora. This is Banyan Treatment Center's Faith in Recovery radio show. Thank you for joining us. Faith in Recovery is part of Banyan Treatment Center's Faith in Recovery program. We deal with alcohol addiction, substance abuse, mental health disorders. We are in Pompano Beach, Florida, and our website is faithinrecovery.com, and we could also be reached at banyantreatmentcenter.com. So those are our websites. This is our program. We have a really special guest today. Very excited to have her on the show today. I'm going to introduce her right now. We have Cindy Dodds. Here she is. I said it right.
Yes,
I was kidding with her before, saying her name wrong, and she didn't like that. And so I definitely wanted to get that right. So we're blessed to have her. She's here in studio, and thank you for joining us, Cindy.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a message that's worth sharing, even though it breaks my heart.
Thank you so much. You know, we talk a lot about transparency on the show and really being completely honest. And I referenced David, you know, it's some of the Psalms, a lot of the Psalms, in fact. And, you know, God allows us to go through things sometimes for us to actually, you know, overcome them and then use that pain and suffering to help other people.
You're so
All
right.
the tests become our testimonies, right?
So right. You're so right.
So that's kind of what you know, just when you said that, that's kind of what I was thinking of. This is not easy, I'm sure, to talk about what you're going to talk about. And, you know, it's easier to just kind of run away from it. But look at all the people that you're going to be helping, the listeners right now that are out there that are dealing with very much the same thing, very similar situations. People dealing with addiction, you know, in the grips of that, in bondage, basically.
Absolutely.
So, Cindy, tell us a little bit about your story.
It's a very long story, but I'm going to jump to present. At 15, Kyle played very big for his size at Westminster Christian School. He was in a little bit of a bubble, but he wasn't a bubble kid. He knew what the world meant. So at 15, they were rebuilding the program, and he was fierce in life, and everything he did, he was fierce. So he fiercely threw himself into this program. And he had, you know, his athletics was his talent from God, for sure. So through that process, a local school saw his film before they exchanged films before the games, and they had 3 on him at all times. So their mission was to get Kyle Dodds out of the game. However, they had to, because he was the one you had to stop. So they piled on. They tore both shoulders, labrums on both shoulders. And at Christmas the following year, it was time for the surgery after his season. And he just, you know, you can live with it, but then you really can't. So he had a brilliant surgeon, and we love him still. But he did the surgeries and introduced him to what would eventually take his life, and that was an opiate for pain, hydrocodone, disguised in everybody's, you know, medicine cabinet as something safe. It's not safe for an adolescent forming brain. Wow. So at 15, addiction was woken up in my son's brain, and he fought hard. But his senior season, all of a sudden the wheels were off. He was still dabbling, we just didn't know. He hid it because he was a super athlete. You couldn't believe that he could be drug addicted, because while he did some, you know, pot and alcohol, he went into the bad neighborhoods to get his drugs, so even his friends were not realizing how bad this was for him. So 8 years of active addiction and 8 rehabs, 3 overdoses in my home with me as the first responder. And on September 26th, he had been clean. He was doing pretty well. He was starting to lose it. I could see that his hope was starting to leave him, which without hope or nothing. And he had a fresh haircut, a brand new car, a job. You know, he was a great kid, but he was very depressed at that point, not clinical, but depressed at losing so many people trying to get recovery. They were dropping like flies, especially in Miami, 246 the month that he died. So he left the house. We'd had a rough night because he had been drinking, and He wouldn't come home into the house, and you know, one of our biggest fears as a mother, and I know people can relate to this, is don't let my child hurt somebody else. And so it was becoming apparent that was going to happen soon. And so he went to Overtown for a bump of cocaine to make him feel better, and they mixed fentanyl. He wasn't an IV user, so it was powder fentanyl, powder heroin, morphine, and then the one that stopped him in his tracks, and he went to be with Jesus immediately. I don't even think he hit the sidewalk. His carfentanil, the animal tranquilizer, it's 3 grains of sand-like substance is enough to kill you.
Wow.
They're losing drug-sniffing dogs. I mean, it's just, the epidemic is so overpowering.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, as you were speaking, I'm thinking the addiction was woken up in him. Is that what you said? Something to that effect?
Yes, the chemical woke up. He was always going to carry this genetic component. Right. Even though we are not addicts, there's addiction in our family, as I would guess every family is touched by it. And it just hardwired it now into his brain.
Right. And what is so important here, and we see this over and over, we see this with our clients at Faith in Recovery at Banyan. The difference is, I was talking about this on the ride down here, you know, when I was growing up in the, you know, 30s and no, actually in the, not that old yet, but I won't say when it was, but it was a long time ago, and there was very few people that I knew that were doing heroin or overdosing from heroin. And here, now you fast forward to now, and you have people that maybe they wouldn't have got involved with like cocaine or anything that might be laced with fentanyl or heroin. They have an injury. Sometimes it's a sports injury. It could be someone that would never in a million years that you would think would get involved with these things, but they get an injury and they're prescribed something, and they start using it and they get addicted to it. And that leads, oftentimes we see, it's like a stepping stone into other things, because the next step a lot of times is heroin. And you can't get so many prescriptions, and it's expensive if you're on the opiates and different things and the painkillers. So what do? The next thing you know, somebody introduces you to someone who's dealing heroin, and that's how it starts. And you mentioned the fentanyl and the carfentanil. I mean, we're talking about stuff that is just so powerful it could actually put down an elephant. I mean, that's what they use the carfentanil for, right?
It's an
elephant tranquilizer, and it could be like a grain of salt, you know, that's in there, or 2 or 3 of those. Who's going to really be able to measure that? I know the drug dealers don't really care what's in there. They're just cutting it to make more money. And the next thing you know, this person's gone. So they had an injury, they got prescribed some painkillers, it escalated, they're gone. So.
And to add to that, my first questions to the detectives, because they investigated it as a homicide. They knew immediately he'd been killed, and they have ruled it a homicide, accidental overdose homicide, and which will lead to my discussion of the law. But in the meantime, it's just to be able to think about a drug dealer who's killing his own buyers. It makes no sense. So that was the question I gave the detective. And he said, Cindy, it's so sick out there that if you are known as the person that deals death with your drugs, people seek you out for the high. If your son had possibly survived that, he would have been a customer of that dealer forever until he was gone.
Right. That's the thing that I just learned about this about a year ago, because we were dealing with some clients with overdoses and things, and I was astonished by that somebody overdoses and dies, and the drug dealer's sales go through the roof, and everybody's going around seeking that dealer because it has the powerful stuff to get that huge high or whatever it is. I mean, that is, like you said, it's sick.
It's very sick.
Wow.
So very early on, after this happened, I mean, I'm a very vocal person, and I wear my heart on my sleeve, and if I have a mission, man, you're not going to stop me until you hear the whole thing. Yeah, I can be like that.
Yeah.
So very early on, I was known as the white woman walking through Overtown, very dangerous part of town, and I did not know it, but it's not too far from the police department, and I went to an opiate task force meeting with some of the brightest people I've ever met in my life, totally dedicated to stopping this epidemic. They have the answers, they just don't have funds, and you know, they're government workers, their hands are tied by so many things, but afterwards, the chief of fire, the chief of police, the state prosecutors, I mean, the whole gamut lined up to talk to me because I was one of 10 people in this huge chamber that came to hear the meeting. That's, people just don't know about this stuff. And the one that was jumping at the end was a man named Howard Rosen, and he works directly with Catherine Fernandez Rundle's office, who, again, is my kind of like my family now. But he said, I've been searching for you. I hear about the white woman that walks through Overtown. And I said, who are you? So from there, he called me. He says, will you train my state's prosecutors? And we had 300 of them. And I shared Kyle's story, and I was only one piece of it. And at the end, you know, I played his video of pictures of him, because my whole mission was to put a face on the epidemic, because these people are beat up. You know, they're in this fight day in and day out. They're underpaid, they're underloved. And I told him how I spoke before the commission just out of the blue, and I said, I'm concerned about you guys. I have PTSD from bringing my son back from overdoses. What must you have? And they were like, oh, thank you, Jesus. And they didn't say that. But, oh, thank God, somebody even cares about us. And I'm like, yeah, of course I care about you.
Wow.
I mean, you guys saved my boy many times. So it was powerful, and to jump forward, I worked with them in Senator Rubio's office and others. Miami Herald was very instrumental in this, in covering, and Jackie Nesbrawl at NBC6, her nephew played ball with Kyle, so I knew her. They've all picked it up, and the law has been passed. If you deal death with your drugs, it is mandatory felony sentencing, which is life in prison without parole or the death penalty. We have the harshest laws, from my understanding, in the whole nation now. We went from not even classifying fentanyl to now. And it went into effect on October 1st of this year. Governor Scott signed it in 5 months early, but it didn't take effect because I believe that people were still skeptical whether we could get this through. And so once I called him and I wrote him and I said, sign it so that these state prosecutors can stop being so nervous that it's not going to get through and do their jobs. And he did. It was the next day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, that's a mother's love. That's what, you're the mother of, and this is blunt, you're the mother of a dead kid. People cannot turn you down.
Wow. Wow. Powerful. Thank you for sharing.
You're very
this.
welcome.
Thank you for sharing this. We are going to need to take a quick break. You're listening to Faith in Recovery. I'm Anthony Acampora, your host. We'll be right back.
Lord, I need you. Oh,
If you or a loved one are struggling with drug and alcohol problems or mental health disorders, call Banyan Treatment Center at 888-270-5712. Visit our website, faithinrecovery.com. We have a compassionate and understanding staff that were once in your shoes, and our clinical team is highly skilled to handle all types of addictions. If you need help, don't wait. Call 888-270-5712 or visit our website, faithinrecovery.com.
Okay, we are back with a special guest here today on Faith in Recovery. I'm your host, Anthony Acampora, Banyan Treatment Center's Faith in Recovery program. We have Cindy Dodds here, and wow, what a powerful story. If you just joined us, it's just absolutely incredible what she is sharing. I want to ask you another question here, Cindy. Why would a mom who's experienced such loss bring her pain to such a vocal level?
Because only a mom that has walked through these shoes understand what others are going through right now today. Even listening to this program, there's somebody suffering like I did, and there was nothing really available for me at the time. And so this is my mission. This is the rest of my life mission. And it's taking on different meanings, and it's taking on different forms, and God just opens every single door. I don't ever worry. They change programs on me, whatever it is. I'm like, that's okay. That's all right. That's fine. And that's not my nature. So I'm here because this message has to get out. This generation is dying. The effect on our children, and the effect of children losing their best friends growing up and never thinking it could happen to them, the effect on this generation coming through, and some of the brightest and best among us are gone.
Wow.
And what is this generation going to look at? One of the first things my husband said to me, he says, Cindy, we're never going to have his grandchildren.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very real, and the pain is every day, but he gives me hope, and he gives me joy, and he puts the wings on my back, and yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for sharing that. We were just talking about this yesterday in one of our devotional groups at Faith and Recovery, and we were talking about how when we surrender a lot of times to God and His will, you know, God's looking for people to use to help people. Right? He's trying to influence as many people globally as possible. So, you know, you have a horrendous, horrible situation, but, you know, Romans 8:28, God will work all things together for good, right? To those who love Him. And I know you love Him. I know you're a Christian, because it's funny how we connected. I posted one of our baptisms at Banyan Treatment Center. We have baptisms about every month and a half. Calvary Chapel facilitates them for us privately, and their big baptism. And I guess somebody that I knew, a psychologist or someone in Miami, knew you, and she forwarded it, and that's how we connected, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, I live on Key Biscayne, and one day on the beach there were 3 baptisms. The one from my church, Christ Journey, and one from Calvary Chapel. That was the addicts in recovery being baptized. I stopped and I hugged and I loved on him, and I said, I wish that my son could be here. He was still alive at the time, but I remember thinking, this is so powerful. And then there you were on my Facebook feed.
It's absolutely incredible how God will do that.
What a coincidence.
He'll put the exact people that, you know, you need, or someone that's hurting, or someone that you've gone through things and you're able to minister to them and to encourage them. He'll put them right in front of you. We see this already with our clients in Faith and Recovery. They had just come in. Some of them never read the Bible before or been in a church. And all of a sudden, they're starting to get this stuff, and they're starting to really want to share God's hope and love and mercy and everything. And they have opportunities one after another. It'll be their roommate where they're staying, or somebody from another program will be looking for encouragement or help. And that's what he does. And this is another example of it, how, you know, he's just going to continue to just knock down these doors and give you a platform, just kind of like how this happened.
Yeah.
It's just, I see this just, you know, continuing, because this message has to be heard. This message has to get out. There's too many people dying. We're losing too many people from this. And I know, you know, Congress and the government's starting to notice, you know, but it needs to just escalate. It really needs to just take off. And people like you, I've been through a lot of pain and suffering, and that's how I went into addiction field and everything, from addiction, alcohol, gambling, all these different things, depression. And it's not easy to talk about. It took me a long time. I went through all this stuff, you know, 10 years ago, a lot of it, you know, 8 years ago. So with you, I mean, with what you're talking about and dealing with, to come on a radio show or go in front of the people that you go in front of, and hopefully you share a little bit about that with the prosecutors and the law aspect of it. But it's like, it takes a lot of courage, because it is not easy to keep talking about this over and over. But you do it because you know there's a need, and you know there's someone on the other line or on the other end of this that's listening to this show, or wherever you're speaking, that needs it. And they're hurting, and they need to hear this.
Not too long ago, and this is, you know, you can't script this stuff. This is a God thing. The mayor of Nashville lost her son to an opiate overdose in Denver when he was in college. And I saw it, and I immediately reached out to her. And she immediately reached back out to me and said, thank you so much. There's nobody who's going to understand this the way that we do. And, you know, we've kept in touch somewhat. But I was just, and she is a Christian. And it was just, this is just everywhere. And thank the Lord we have Facebook and social media and radio, because no one has to live in the shadow of shame anymore. Amen. You don't. There are so many options. For families, they're getting better. The new drugs that are being tested right now are going to not cause these issues in the brain. There's genetic testing coming for addiction, so before you even get an operation, you can find out. Wow. So there's a lot of hope. I have joy. There's no reason why I should, as far as the world looking at me, but I barely walk on this earth anymore.
Let me ask you this, because this brings up a good question as far as being a person of faith. being a Christian person? Because when I was going through a lot of my things, all the stuff that I was going through, especially the depression and things like that, the anxiety, a lot of times people would say, from the church, where's your faith? Where's your faith? What's going on with you? It's almost like you're doing something wrong if there's a organ in your body that's malfunctioning. If it happens to be the brain. If it's any other organ, everybody's welcoming you and sending you flowers and everything and balloons. But it's like so as a person of faith, how do you navigate that when people when they respond to this? I'm sure you must have to deal with it all the time. What's the feedback like? How do you deal with that?
Well, that's going to be a book coming, but for the full story, but I'll give you a little snippet. I mean, we were caught in the grips of fear. We have a program starting soon for families because we live in fear. We are shamed with fear. We're shamed by what our addict is doing to the family, to themselves, to us, besides the money and everything else that goes into addiction. And you get paralyzed by fear, and then you sit in your pew and you're getting ministered, and people, well-meaning people around you, well, perfect love casts out all fear. Yes. Well, welcome to our lives where we walk and have our cell phones in our hand for that call, for that moment, where you open the front door knowing that your son is home and he hasn't answered the phone, and you just are paralyzed with, what am I going to find? And that's happened. We had a UPS driver, because my husband works for UPS, that when I couldn't get Kyle to answer the phone, if he happened to be home for some reason, the UPS driver would enter our apartment and report back. Right. I mean, it's fear. And so from the pulpit 2 weeks ago, a young singer in our church talked about her own example of being paralyzed in fear, and that's when God said, that's the name of the group, and that's what you have to address, because families are hunkered down in fear.
Wow, that's powerful. That is powerful. Thank you for sharing that. The Bible talks about God does not give us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. But there's a lot of things that we could be fearful for, and there's a lot of things that happen, and sometimes the legalistic mindset and things is like, what do you mean you're fearing? Where's your faith? What's going on with you? Read this. And I used to get that all the time. I would get these scriptures about anxiety, and Philippians 4, 6, and 7. They're great. They're incredible words by Paul and in the Bible. But sometimes it just takes like a listening ear and somebody just to kind of, especially someone that's dealt with it and someone that's gone through
Absolutely.
it. And that's why this is so powerful for you, because you're going to influence and affect so many people. They're, like you said, they're going to listen because of what you went through, Right?
Absolutely. And I have the privilege of being in a large church in the local area, and our pastor did have addiction issues in college, and God found him, pulled him out of them, and he's an amazing man. But we voted to change the name of our church from Baptist to Christ Journey, because he taught us that that's what we're on, is a Christ journey. We all come to that aha moment on different ways, and because of that, we are seeing more people coming in, because, and I'm not slamming any religion. It's just in this day and age, it's associated with legalism, and we are the least legal church, legalized whatever church that I know. I mean, there's freedom. There's freedom to fail. There's freedom for everything, and we are blessed in Miami to have an amazing amount of great churches. God is at work here.
Beautiful. So, Cindy, tell us a little bit about how could someone reach you with your Facebook pages, the foundations, any way that if someone is looking to connect with you, and let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. On Facebook, it's Kyle's Hope is my mission. For the best story, a recap video, front page, miamiherald.com, Kyle Dodds. And you will find his full story. It's gone globally. It's in South Africa. It's in Sweden, in England. I live on an international island, so it's been really easy to share his story.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out here. She's in studio, Cindy Dodds. What a powerful testimony, but what a powerful person to be able to go out and share this message of hope is really what it is. It's a powerful, powerful testimony, and it's a powerful message. And we thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. This is Faith in Recovery. BanyanTreatmentCenter.com is our website at Banyan Treatment Center in Pompano Beach, Florida. Faith in Recovery is our Faith in Recovery website, faithinrecovery.com. You could also reach us at 888-270-5712, 888-270-5712. My name is Anthony Acampora. Thank you for joining us. Join us every week, same time. Psalm 147:3, He heals the brokenhearted and He binds up their wounds. God bless you.